Tony Beets just lost $500,000. And the season hasn't even properly begun. Forced off the Indian River before a single bucket of dirt has moved, he's already hemorrhaging money with no ground to mine and $1 million dredge that's barely turning a profit. His weekly cleanup comes in at 11 ounces, the worst number in his entire 30-year career on the Klondike. What we did, it can only go up from here. We weren't very consistent, but we ran and fixed the bucket line. All we can do is get better. He needs 50 ounces just to break even. But then something shifts. A 50-ton crane arrives by barge. 3 plants fire up simultaneously. And the king of the Klondike, the man who never folds, starts clawing back from the edge in a way nobody on his crew saw coming. What happens next changes everything about how this season ends. The dredge that almost broke him. Tony has poured over $1 million into his 1938 dredge, a full year of his life and every dollar he could move, into a machine that is now 75 years old and behaves like it every single day. In return, the dredge has given him back $88,000. He needs 100 times that amount just to break even before the Klondike freezes. And this week, the machine won't stay running long enough to produce a meaningful cleanup, because the bucket line keeps jumping its track every time they build any momentum. Jerry the winchman has been watching the chain for days. He finally puts a name to the problem. When we went to put this together last fall, we didn't have enough buckets to complete the chain no matter what. So we added 3 extra buckets. We don't know if we should have put in just 2 instead of 3. When the crew reassembled the dredge the previous fall, they were short on buckets, not enough to make the chain function at all. They improvised and added 3 extra buckets to fill the gap. Jerry suspects one of those 3 shouldn't be there. The chain is too long by exactly 1 link. Jerry's conclusion is straightforward. They added 3 extra buckets the previous fall when they were running short, and one of those 3 doesn't belong. The chain is 1 link too long, and until that link is removed, the dredge will keep jumping its track. Gene the dredge mechanic steps back and takes a long, careful look at how the chain is sitting, watching how it loads and where it skips. Gradually, he comes around to Jerry's way of thinking. The line is too long. Pull 1 bucket out, close the gap, and the chain runs the way it was designed to. The fix sounds manageable. It is not. Gene runs the floor, and Gene is in charge. It's Gene and Tony handling the repair together, without Jerry, whose idea it was in the first place. On a machine this complicated, problems get solved through the chain of command, even when that means the person who identified the issue stays on the outside of the work. I haven't spoken to Tony about the problems we have here. Gene's in charge. They work the pin. Comes halfway out, then sticks cold. The buckets start pulling sideways against the frame. For a moment, the entire repair looks like it might spiral into a bigger disaster before it becomes a solution. Tony leans into it. Gene holds the chain. Inch by inch, the pin breaks free. They wrap a chain around the loose bucket, lift it clear, draw the ends of the bucket line back together, and reconnect. Tony steps back and looks at what they've got. Tony calls it done. The extra bucket is out. The chain sits exactly where it belongs. For 1 full day, the 1938 dredge runs pay the way Tony has always insisted it can. The cleanup that broke the record for all the wrong reasons. Tony needs 50 ounces a week from the dredge. That is not a stretch goal. That is not something to aspire toward. 50 ounces is the survival number, the floor below which the entire operation begins to bleed out. Minnie walks into the cook shack with the weekly cleanup. Gordon, Jerry, and Mike are all there. The room goes quiet in that particular way rooms go quiet when everyone already knows the news isn't going to be good. Minnie has made this walk every week all season. She knows the number before anyone touches a scale. She sets it down without ceremony. Paul weighs it. 11 ounces. 11.25 worth $12,000. In 30 years on the Klondike, Tony has never seen a cleanup this low. Everyone in the room already knows it. Just kind of disappointing. I never had an 11-ounce cleanup before. Really? Not once in 3 decades. They needed 50. They are $39,000 short of break even in a single week. The dredge has now recovered less than 9% of what Tony put into it. Mike says nothing. Jerry says nothing. The number just sits there on the scale. Tony doesn't fold. He looks at what the week actually was. A 75-year-old machine kept running through a major mechanical failure. They identified the problem with the bucket chain, repaired it mid-operation, and kept the dredge moving. He finds the angle. The only direction from 11 ounces is up. They come back next week and run it again. The cook shack is still. The scale is still on the table. 11.25 ounces. A village he left behind. Tony Beets left a 50-acre dairy farm in the Netherlands at 24 with nothing. 35 years later, on a rare visit home, he's walking the same pastures, the same lane, the same barn. He left as a small-town dairy farmer. He's coming back as Tony Beets, gold mining legend, king of the Klondike, a television personality recognized by the same neighbors who once couldn't stand him. His mother Magda is 82. She lives alone near the family farm. 10 years since Tony's father Klaus passed away. She still drives her car, still rides her bicycle, still tends her own garden. I'm 82, but I still do everything. My garden. I drive my car, my bicycle. Does everything herself, one tough lady. Which explains quite a lot about her son. Tony and Minnie walk the old farm together, and everything is smaller than Tony remembers. The fields, the barn, the pasture, all of it reduced from the scale his memory gave them, compressed down to something that no longer feels like the whole world. He spots the fence posts he put in as a young man. Still standing, still slightly crooked after 35 years. Minnie fell for Tony because she assumed he had money. He was driving a Mercedes. It took her a while to realize the car belonged to his father. By then, it was too late. Magda has been watching Gold Rush. The entire neighborhood knows Tony now. They had imagined him sitting on a riverbank with a gold pan, squinting into a creek somewhere in Canada. When they see the fleet of equipment he actually runs, the dozers, the dredge, the wash plants, the sheer scale of what it takes to pull 2,000 ounces of gold from the Klondike, they find it extraordinary. Magda says Tony was always difficult, always impatient, always somewhere else in his head. A rebel who didn't like rules, had ideas that differed from his parents, and kept the whole village talking about his driving long after he was gone. Some of those same people now watch him on television. There is one other thing they find worth noting. The neighborhood calls him Tony Bleep. His mother delivers this information without any expression on her face whatsoever. Tony Bleep. That is who he is in this village. The kid who left with nothing, came back famous, and still can't get through a sentence on television without being censored. The father's fall. Tony is 15 years old when his father has the accident. When Tony was 15 and his father had his accident, that was a hard time. Yeah. Tony is working up in the haystack when he pulls down one bale and another comes loose from the very top of the stack. It rolls over the beam above the trough and drops directly onto his father, who is working below. 40 or 50 pounds of compressed hay, falling 2 full stories, picking up speed the entire way down. Standing in that same barn 35 years later, Tony walks through what happened. He was in the haystack. He pulled down one bale and another broke free from the very top, rolled over the beam, and fell onto his father working beneath it. His father is conscious when Tony reaches him. He cannot move. The ambulance takes him away. He is paralyzed for 14 days before slowly beginning to improve, but he never works the farm again. He can't work the farm anymore. There is not much left for him to do. The next morning, the cows still need to be milked. Tony is 15. He doesn't debate it. He doesn't stand in the barn asking himself whether this is fair or whether he is ready for it. People have to eat. Things have to keep moving. He just goes. He does all of it himself every single morning before school, before the 7-kilometer bike ride, because that is what the situation demands. Standing around worrying doesn't move anything forward. Tony's operating principle has never been complicated. Whatever the situation, he deals with it. He picks up the slack and keeps going. He settled that at 15 in this barn, and nothing since has changed it. That is not something Tony worked out later in life. That is what a 15-year-old farm kid decided one cold morning in this barn, and he has been operating on it ever since. Trouble at Thistle, the 50-ton solution. Tony has paid $30,000 to ship his 50-ton crane down the Yukon River on a barge, because without it, His dredge teardown at Thistle Creek has been dead in the water for 3 full weeks. The 20-ton crane hit its limit. The large pieces of the dredge won't budge without more lifting capacity. Tony has been watching the season drain away for 3 weeks while the crane sat stranded in Dawson. Zero progress on the teardown. The whole project frozen. Now the crane is at Thistle. Tony doesn't make an announcement. He just points out the helicopter window. "I thought I'd just go and show you something. Peek out of this window. I've got a 50-ton crane sitting there for you. Is that cool or is that cool?" That's really good. I was starting to think this year was going to be a total disaster. The teardown can resume. Len, Tony's rigger, who has been with him for 2 years, and Phil, the welder Tony recruited from the Alberta oil fields, get straight to work on the rear gantry. 8,000 pounds of steel, 55 feet high. They upgrade from a single sling to a 4-chain bridle so the gantry cannot roll or tip when the final beam is cut. Phil burns through the steel. The crane takes the load clean, straight down, no drama. The rear gantry comes down without incident. A few more days at this pace and the dredge will be stripped to its frame. The anchor spud comes next. This is a piece of 2-inch thick steel that has been embedded in the Klondike permafrost for 60 years. The permafrost has had 6 full decades to grip it. The structure was built for permanence. It was never designed to come out. The crane locks on and begins pulling. The cable reading climbs to 12.5 tons, the weight of 5 pickup trucks all pulling in the opposite direction. The spud holds for a long moment. Then it moves. Then Parker Schnabel walks over from the adjacent claim, angry about a road that was dug out behind his fuel truck. He thinks Tony did it. Tony says he hasn't been anywhere near the place. The conversation gets tense. Then Tony actually listens to what Parker is dealing with. Royalty rate thresholds closing in, Big Red running out of ground, his other plant nearly at its limit. And Tony makes an offer. Run 6,000 ounces across both plants combined, total them together, and stay under the 25% penalty rate. Parker takes the deal and walks away with the door open to his biggest season yet. Tony goes back to dismantling his dredge. The race to 3 plants. The 18-acre mega cut on Paradise Hill carries a $5 million estimate, but only if Mike and Kevin are both running plants simultaneously. Tony combined their 2 cuts 3 weeks earlier after Kevin found a rich seam of pay dirt running between them. The upside is real. Kevin's shaker deck is still sitting idle in the yard. Last season, that same shaker deck produced over $3 million in gold. Today, it needs to travel 3/4 of a mile across soft ground to reach Kevin's new pad. Mike brings in the D10 dozer, 700 horsepower, hooks up to the 50-ton plant and starts pulling. We're about to drag the shaker deck into position. Grab a D10. Hook up the cables. Off we go. 1 meter an hour. The ground is soft and gives way in places, and the dozer has to fight for every foot. The plant creeps forward. Then the dozer blows a radiator hose. The engine has been running at its absolute limit and something had to give. Kevin goes to find a replacement. 20 minutes later, he's back. They try again. A loader moves in to push from behind while the dozer pulls from the front. The shaker deck reaches the pad. Kevin levels it out. Some work underneath required, and it takes the pipe layer and additional equipment to get the corner sitting right. If it's crooked now, they lose a week to repairs later. They take the time to do it right. Conveyor attached, hopper connected. Kevin fires it up, and Tony watches the first bucket of pay go in. Almost 3 months into the season, all 3 operations are producing at the same time. The mega cut on Paradise Hill is live. Monica gets married. Tony puts Ruby Mahoney in charge of Monica's wash plant before leaving for Dawson. Monica's cut is the single biggest earner Tony has running. 1 lost day costs $36,000. Ruby knows the plant does not stop. Tony heads toward Dawson. Monica is getting married today, the one thing that pulls him off the claim in the middle of the season. He is already on the highway when Ruby calls. A large rock has jammed in the feeder and the plant is dead. 1 day of downtime at that plant costs $36,000. Tony turns the truck around, drives back, clears the rock, and gets the plant moving again. Then he turns toward Dawson and drives as fast as the road allows. His daughter is getting married today, and he is already running late. Len is standing outside a building in Dawson holding a suit Tony hasn't worn in years. Tony puts it on. The tie ends up tucked underneath the collar where nobody can see it. Now I need to get this on, I suppose. Fits me like a saddle on a sow. Len is waiting outside with the suit. Tony puts it on, notes that the tie is hidden underneath where no one can see it, and concludes the whole arrangement makes very little sense. Tony makes it. He walks Monica down the aisle. He sits in the front row in a suit he says he will next wear when they bury him. At the reception, Minnie is asked about 38 years of marriage to Tony Beets. She sums it up plainly. She feels she deserves a medal. Tony feels he deserves parole. Neither one is getting what they want, and neither one is going anywhere. The way up. Mike's cleanup goes first. 53 ounces, $75,000. 2 days of sluicing, 25 ounces a day, consistent. Exactly where Mike has been all season. Then Monica puts her week on the scale. First full week of sluicing at the hunker cut. 30, 40, 50, 60, 62 ounces. Nearly 10 ounces more than Mike. For the first time all season, Monica has outproduced her older brother. Monica's 62 ounces is nearly 10 ounces better than Mike's week. First time all season she has beaten him. Tony looks over at Kevin. Kevin's shaker deck is running dirt, but he has nothing on the scale yet. Tony doesn't let it sit. He points that out directly. Kevin confirms a cleanup is coming next week. 3 plants producing. Monica at 62 ounces. Mike steady at 25 ounces a day. Kevin's shaker deck turning over the mega cut. The $5 million estimate for Paradise Hill is no longer theoretical. It is now a race against the season clock. The road back. Tony Beets is down $500,000. He also has Monica at 62 ounces, Mike steady at 25 ounces a day, Kevin's shaker deck live on the mega cut, and a 6,000-ounce deal with Parker Schnabel that nobody saw coming. Why are you with one plant? Get the other one up to 300 or something. The other one's just about at 3,000. A long way from 11 ounces. Not yet far enough. The math still doesn't close. Tony is chasing a hole that started $500,000 wide. And the Klondike freeze does not move for anyone. Every week from here matters. Every cleanup counts. Every hour the plants sit idle is money he cannot get back. Tony's operating principle has never been complicated. Whatever the situation, he deals with it. He picks up the slack and keeps going. He decided that at 15 in that barn, and nothing since has changed it. He walked through that Dutch barn 2 weeks ago and remembered the morning he became the man he is. Tony Beets made that decision at 15 years old in a Dutch dairy barn, standing next to cows that needed milking. Whether his father was standing or lying on the ground, he picked up the slack that morning. He is still picking it up on the Klondike 35 years later, with everything he is riding on whether 3 wash plants can run long enough and hard enough to close a $500,000 gap before the freeze arrives. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next one. Drop a comment below. Do you think Tony closes the gap before freeze up? The 3 plants are running, the mega cut is live, but the $500,000 hole is real. And the Klondike doesn't give extensions. The clock is already running hard. And so, as always, is Tony.